Hello and welcome back to Mastering Flat Design. In this lesson we're going to create the video camera icon for the video production section, and I want to do this by zooming in first so that we can really see what we're doing. This one's going to be a little bit more detailed than the monitor icon that we created in the last video, and I want to start by creating the body of the camera. So we're going to use a rounded rectangle for that. So I'm going to select the rounded rectangle tool. I'm not going to put a fill on any of these, just a stroke. And our stroke for this one is going to be 3 point. And the radius for the corners is going to be 3 pixels. So once we type that out, I'm going to click and drag out for our rectangle here. And we want to put it somewhere around 110 by 70 pixels. And that looks good. So let's grab that layer that we just created, and I'm going to drag it into the main content section, into the main content folder, but above the video production. Actually, let's drag it into the video production folder and then close the web graphic design folder. And then inside the video production folder, we'll grab that layer, which is the bottommost layer now inside that folder, and we'll drag it up to the top so that we can actually see it. And there we go. Now we can see that shape. So if we hit V to switch to the move tool, we can see that shape without the anchor points and the path around it, and it's a good start. So let's draw the handle on top of the camera, which is going to be just a couple of rectangles here. So we're going to go to the regular rectangle tool. We're going to use the same stroke of 3 points, and I'm just going to click down here at the innermost part of the path and drag upwards. And I want this to be about 10 pixels wide and somewhere around 22 pixels tall. V to switch to the move tool, nudge it up 1 pixel so that it's not dipping down below that stroke down there. So we'll just nudge that up, and that looks pretty good right there. So then we'll make a copy of this, Command J to duplicate that layer, and then we'll move this copy over. And then we're going to create another rectangle to serve as the top part of the handle. So we're going to go back to the rounded rectangle tool here. And what I'm about to do here, we can do using Photoshop CC. In Photoshop CC, we can now create a rounded corner, but then change the roundness of individual corners. And if you're using an older version of Photoshop, the way we would do what we're about to do is we would create a rounded rectangle like this, and then we would grab the rectangle tool, change this option up here to subtract front shape, and then we would subtract out the bottom portion of the shape in order to get the shape we're looking for, where we have 2 rounded corners on top and 2 sharp corners on bottom. So that's how we would do it if we were using an older version. If we were using Photoshop CS6 or earlier, we'd have to do it this way. However, I'm going to delete that. Using Photoshop CC, we can use the rounded rectangle tool here, and then I'm going to draw the shape to be as wide as we need it to be and as tall as we need it to be. I'm going to make this about a little over 10 pixels tall. And then once we've created that, we can come over here to the properties, and you'll see that we have properties for the roundness of all 4 corners. So I'm going to click on this chain link icon to unlink those 4 corners so that we can change some of the corners individually. So we're going to come down to the bottom left corner and type in 0 and hit enter. And then the same thing for the bottom right corner, 0, enter. Then V to switch to the move tool, and we can nudge that around until we have it where we need it to be. And there we go, there's our handle. Now this is a little bit, I want that handle to be maybe a little thinner. So I'm gonna hit A to switch back to the direct selection tool. And then I'm gonna click and drag around the top 4 anchor points here. You'll notice that now the top 4 are selected, but the bottom 2 are not selected. Then I'm just gonna hit the down arrow once or twice. Twice looks good here to change that height a little bit. Click outside, V to switch to the move tool, and that looks pretty good. And we can hit Command 1 or Control 1 on a PC to zoom out to 100% to see how that looks so far. So let's zoom back in, and let's create more of the body of the camera here. I'm going to create basically the top of the tripod, the part of the camera at the bottom that gets mounted to the top of the tripod, and then the top of the tripod itself. So we're going to do this using regular rectangles. So I'm going to create just a small, very thin rectangle here that's going to be about 50 something pixels wide. Let's make it about 54 pixels wide, and 8 pixels tall works just fine. And you can see here at some point we changed the fill and stroke settings. So let's change these back, turn off the fill. We're going to choose a white color for the stroke and a stroke of 3 points. And there we go. So V to switch to the move tool, nudge that up, and I'll nudge it back a little bit like so. And that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to duplicate this layer, Command J, and nudge it down until the top stroke for the bottom shape and the bottom stroke for the top shape are overlapping, like so. And then Command T to transform the bottom shape. Now I want this one to be a little bit wider than the top shape, so I'm going to hold on to Option or Alt if you're using a PC and drag out one of the sides, and you'll notice it drags out in both directions. And then I'm going to let go of Option and then drag down on the bottom to make it a little bit taller, and accidentally drag the whole thing down. Let's hit Command Z to undo that. There we go. So we just want to make this bottom section a little bit taller than the top section. And somewhere around there looks good. And then I'm going to draw a semicircular shape just below that. In fact, let's make this a little bit shorter than it currently is. Make that a little too tall. 13 pixels works just fine. So I'm going to basically create a circle and then cut off the bottom section of that circle. So we're going to go to the ellipse tool, and I want this ellipse to be almost 60 pixels wide. Somewhere around 60 will work fine. That's 59, that'll work. And then I want to cut off the bottom section of this. So I'm going to go back to the rectangle tool. And if I want to subtract part of that shape, then we're going to come up here to the top and change this option here from new layer to subtract front shape. And then we'll draw that front shape a little over halfway down, like so. And as you can see, it subtracts the bottom part of that shape. And then I want to just combine all of these so that it's just one shape, not two shapes overlapping each other. And the way we do that is we come back up here to the same options and then go down here to the bottom where it says Merge Shape Components. When we do that, it merges it into one shape, and we can click on Yes to apply that change. V to switch to the Move tool, and we'll just drag this down underneath the shapes that we've already drawn. Then I'm going to put a handle on the back of the tripod here so that we can move the camera up and down. And we're going to do that using another simple rectangle, and we're going to do this up here. I'm going to drag it straight backwards to start with, and then we're going to rotate it in a moment after we create the handle for it. And the handle for it is just going to be another rectangle, so we'll just draw another rectangle like so, and then V to switch to the Move tool and nudge that handle into place, and then we'll grab both the handle and the bar that the handle is attached to, which are these two layers here. We can turn those off and on just to double check that they're the right layers. And with both of those layers selected, we'll hit Command T on a Mac or Control T on a PC to transform them. And I'm just going to rotate them down. And then we'll drag these into place here. And there we go. So we have a handle for our tripod that we can move the camera or tilt the camera up and down with. And there we go. So now I want to put just a few more shapes here, and in the next video we'll do the lens for the front of the camera. So over this main shape here, we're going to create another rounded rectangle. This one is going to have a thinner stroke on it. So the first thing we want to do is to deselect any shapes we currently have selected. And right now we still have these two layers selected. So I'm just going to click on that rectangle 7 layer and add a new layer above it. And on this new layer, we're going to create our new shape. Now, as you can see, this is quickly getting out of hand with the number of layers we have. So let's go ahead and grab all of the layers that we created for our video camera. I'm going to turn them all off just to make sure that we have all the right layers selected. And it looks like I have too many layers selected. This bottom layer here is the background. We don't want to select that one. So we'll select this one, and I believe some of these up here are part of it as well. Yeah. So we're going to grab all of these layers that are above the text layers and drag them below the text layers so that we have all of the layers for our video camera together. And then we can turn all of the selected layers off and back on just to make sure we have the right ones selected, and that looks good. So then we'll bring those all into a group by hitting Command-Shift-Option and clicking on the Create New Group icon, or again, if you're using a PC, it would be Control-Shift-Alt and click on that folder icon. And we're going to name this group Video Camera. Okay, so now inside the video camera folder, We're going to click on this layer 1 that we just created. It doesn't have anything in it. I'm going to drag it up to the top of the video camera group there. And then in that new layer, we're going to create our shape. So it's going to be a rounded rectangle, a stroke of just 1 point instead of 3. And then for the corner radius, I'm going to bring that down to 2 pixels. And then we're going to create the shape somewhere in the middle of our main camera body shape. So we're going to make this close to 55 pixels by close to 30 pixels tall. It doesn't have to be exact. We're just illustrating a camera here. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we'll nudge that over a little bit. I want to put some buttons over here on the left side using the ellipse tool. So we'll do that. And we'll make these somewhere around 8 pixels in diameter. V to switch to the move tool, and we'll move that over. And these have a stroke of 1 point as well. We'll duplicate that, nudge it down, duplicate it again, and nudge it down. So we have 3 copies of it. I'm going to duplicate it again, and then we'll put 3 more buttons over here on the bottom right portion of the camera. And this is just to add some detail. And there we go. So there's the main body of the camera and the tripod. In the next lesson, we'll move forward and make the lens for the front of the camera. For now, let's save our file, and we're going to save it as flatdesign11.psd, and we'll move on with the next video. So thank you for watching.